Good afternoon, members. It is time to start the meeting of the panel on environmental affairs. Item 1 on the agenda. Information papers issued since the last meeting. The Secretariat hasn't issued any since the last meeting. Item 2, discussion items for the next meeting. Our next meeting will be held on the 26th of May, 2025 at 2:30 p.m. on Monday. Two proposals from the administration. First, implementation progress and update of the Hong Kong Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. And the second one is about the progress of the implementation of the strategy of hydrogen development in Hong Kong. Members, do you agree with the arrangements? All right, thank you. That takes us to the third item on the agenda, district cooling system. DCS. Members may start to press the button to request to speak. I would like to welcome the administration. First, I'll give the floor to the administration to walk us through the paper briefly. Please invite the public officers to join us. I would like to welcome our Secretary, Director of the EMS, as well as the Deputy Secretary of the Bureau, and from the EMSD, we have also got Mr. Kong, Deputy Director, and we have also got Mr. Chiu from the EMSD, and we have also Public Officer responsible for energy, Mr. Chow. I would like to give the floor to the Secretary, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members all around the world, like Singapore, the mainland, and European cities in Shenzhen, Qianhai, Guangzhou. District cooling systems have been in use. When compared with the traditional cooling systems, district cooling systems are found to be having an advantage of 35% in terms of energy efficiency. It will help to reduce carbon emission. It will help with the flexibility of building design. There are also other benefits. The administration has taken the lead to build and operate a district cooling system in Kai-Tak development, providing cooling water to the cruise terminal, etc., like schools, etc. And in fact, 775 million kilowatts of energy has been saved, and in fact 50,000 tons of carbon emission have been saved. In fact, for the Kai-Tak system, we have already proved ourselves to be successful. That is, such a green initiative is feasible in Hong Kong. For Kutong North and Tung Chung East, in fact, the projects have entered the main construction phase. They will be completed in 2026-2027 respectively. To make sure that they can provide service to the customers in time, we propose to amend the schedules of the ordinance, that is District Cooling Services Ordinance, so as to include those two areas, and would like to rely on the user pays principle to update the charges, the rates of the charges, and we would be amending the surface area of the Kai-Tak DCS so as to cover more clients. We have consulted the sectors, and we are now drafting the relevant amendment rules, and will be submitting a draft order to the LegCo, hoping that we can implement the changes within the year. And then for Hung Shui Q, Ha Chun, and the Sentin Technopole, they are at an initial stage, or they are at a planning stage. In accordance with the current planning, they will become the largest DCS in Hong Kong. In the light of the advantages of DCS, non-government organizations and private organizations have already or are in the process of designing their own DCS. Having borne in mind the experience in the rest of the world, we believe that government-led projects are not the mainstream. In order to rely on the government to take the lead, we'll be making great use of public money, and we're denying the private sector of using the approach. Therefore, we started to review the future of the DCS as being led by the government. We'll try to review the priorities. We'll try to confine government-led proposals to those that are absolutely necessary. So for the time being, we believe that for the 2 DCS area proposed, will be able to save no less than $40 billion of public money. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Kong to walk us through the paper with the aid of a PPT. Yes, Director, please. Testing. Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. I will briefly talk about the construction of DCS in different new development areas, the progress as well as the plan for the future. Well, it is a large-scale centralized system so that the cooling water will be supplied to different buildings via underground chilled water piping network. So compared with the traditional water-cooled or air-cooled systems, 20% and 30% energy can be saved in terms of the consumption of electricity. We understand that the energy efficiency is significant. We can achieve economy of scale, and we can reduce the construction costs as well as the operation costs. And since the cooling units are highly efficient, and we have centralized management and automated control, we are able to enhance the energy efficiency. And then for such buildings served by the DCS, they don't need to take up the space on the rooftop. And then the building design can be more flexible, and we can reduce the heat island effect and noise. We can also free up the rooftop space, which may be used for recreational area installation of renewable energy installations. And in fact, for the Financial Secretary, in his 2025-26 budget, he said that the government is reviewing the scale and mode of delivery of DCS in NDAs to tie in the development of the area with greater cost effectiveness in relation to Hung Shui Kiu, Hachun, and Shanting Technopole. The preliminary estimate of savings in terms of works expenditure is at least $40 billion. Greater cost effectiveness will be considered. Well, we have considered the different scenarios. It is time to look at the plan and mode of development of DCS in different NDAs. We've already taken into account the past 10 years demonstration experience of high-tech development area, and we have looked at the changes in land use as well as the commercial developments. We also looked at the risk as well as the ability or capacity of the private sector to take up the job. For the main findings, we understand that if the government is to take the lead, it seems that it is no longer the mainstream. And in fact, the market forces can take the lead. And for the private sector to take the lead, it will be more flexible and it can be more in line with the needs of the users in the area. And then for non-government organizations for the government to take the lead, we cannot reduce the pressure, the burden on the public coffers. And for the private developers to take up the task, in fact, the risk can be more controllable and they can make greater use of their own financial resources, and it's more in line with the needs and pacing of their development projects. Therefore, we would like to make adjustments to the scale of the DCS in Hung Shui Kiu Hachun Stage 1. Instead of 2 central cooling plants, there will be one to be built by the government. For Shanting Technopole, the DCS will no longer be government-led. On the other hand, will be facilitating private participation. We will also encourage non-government organizations and private developers to take part in the construction of DCS or centralized multi-building cooling system. We'll consider the floor area exemption and we'll also look at the tax concessions available. The MSD may also provide more planning guidelines and operational guidance to facilitate. In relation to high-tech DCS, 3 plants have been completed and they have been commissioned and they are operational. And we are providing the DCS system service to the children's hospital as well as the sports park, etc. Well, in fact, the acute hospital will come into commissioning phase later this year, so the utilization rate will go up. According to the latest figures, in fact, the energy efficiency of Kai-Tak DCS when compared with the traditional systems, in the case of multi-story commercial buildings, it is significantly higher. The annual average is at least 35% better. On the other hand, we would like to introduce our ideas on Kutong North and Tung Chung East. In relation to their plants, in fact, it is actively underway. In 2026 and 2027, the DCS in the two places will come into operation. Well, in fact, we are certain of the benefits to be attained. We'll continue with the two projects to make sure that we can achieve the expected results. And then for Hung Shui Kiu Ha Chun Stage 1, in the year 2024, month of May, $3.2 billion have been granted by the FC to lay the pipes. In the light of the progress of development, we would like to make adjustments to the scale of Phase 1 of Hung Shui Kiu Ha Chun. Instead of 2 DCS plants built by the government, there will be 1 instead of 2, so that we'll be focusing in the town center where there is a higher demand. That is the private non-residential parts of the developments, just to make sure that we are having cost effectiveness instead of having a total cooling, total air conditioned floor area of 2.7 million meters square. It will be 700,000 meters square. We'll continue to take the lead in relation to the Hung Shui Kiu Phase 1. According to the latest progress, we will also look at the case, and then we will approach the PWSD as well as the FC to get money for the relevant projects. In the case of Sentin Technopole, it is mainly used for the purpose of R&T and R&D, and they have special cooling or specific cooling needs, like providing precisely controlled temperature and humidity, etc. So for the government to I think in the light of this, compared with government's continued lead in commissioning the DCS, a more cost-effective and pragmatic approach would be to utilize the incentive measures according to the actual development progress of the area. So we'll be facilitating private participation. And then for Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, we would like to make amendments to CAP 624. First of all, we'll be updating the surface area of Kai-Tak Development DCS. And then 2 DCS in Kutong North and Tung Chung East, respectively, will be added to the surface scope of the ordinance. And then the capacity charge and consumption charge rates will also be amended in relation to Schedule 2. Now, we are showing you on the screen the updated surface area to be implemented by the amendments in relation to Schedule 1. The yellow parts would cover Tokwawan Road, Matau Kok Road, Mok Chau Street, and Kowloon City Road, which surround the redevelopment area as well as the sites near One Kai-Tak. So we hope we can serve more neighboring non-residential items. And then what we are showing you on the screen would be Kutong North DCS and Tung Chung East DCS. The 2 DCS will soon be commissioned, and they will be timely included into Schedule 1 of the ordinance.
The charging mechanisms are in 2 parts. 30-year recovery, the capacity charge, and the consumption charge. On these 2 system spaces, for Kutong North and Tung Chung East, these are the proposed charges. As in Kai-Tak development, the rates have been adjusted. Given the factors affecting the charges, including the development timetable, methods of construction, and the number of plants, and area covered by pipes, Kutong North and Tongchung Newtown extension charges are competitive, and they will compare to it's similar to the independent water-cooled system charges. We have consulted the relevant stakeholders, and they have no dissent in general. We are conducting the drafting work. We propose to submit to LegCo by negative vetting, and within 2025 we will implement the provisions so that there will be timely provision of services. We now welcome questions. I now read the list. Lam Siu Lo, Andrew Lo, Lo Wai Keung, Chen Ken, Dominic Lee, Stephen Ho, Robert Lee, Chen Kwok Keung, Chu Kwok Keung first. And first, Mr. Andrew Lam Siu Lo. Now, DCS is a good service. We have to amend the service mode to encourage more participants outside of the government and to be more positive. So this is actually very positive. We can draw on our experiences. Do we really reduce the risk for stakeholders? Or do we increase the risk? And when you do the calculations, you recover the cost in 30 years and so on. But given the Kai-Tak experience, is it really 30-year recovery? Is that feasible? And in the introduction, it's mentioned that if private developers make the investment, the amount of investment is about the same. So is it that no money is saved? And from the operation angle, you pay. Do you really save the amount of charges paid? And according to the legal laws, now those who wish to use the electricity can apply to EMSD if they are not compelled to use the DCS power. So it's not under government control. And when they use the power, it's also not controlled by the government. So the existing legislation doesn't compel people to use DCS power. Is it possible to offer options so that such that private sector are obliged to use to DCS power? Now, so we like to hear more of your sharing. The Secretary. Now, the DCS system is nothing new, and we have taken on board the experiences abroad and within the mainland. And firstly, there's economy of scale. Secondly, the energy efficacy can be 35% more. So compared to the traditional cooling systems, economically it's advantageous. Now in other countries, other economies, the private developers are taking the lead. They do it themselves now, and there are various advantages. Now, so that's why we encourage the market to participate, and this is welcome to the market. Now, apart from the economic benefits, also, when the government undertakes the projects, it covers a large area such as Kai-Tak, but when the area is so large, things may not be as planned. So that's why for Hong Shui Kiu, we divided into several small areas, and for Sentin Technopole, there are also small areas for better timeliness. Now, so if they can take the projects forward according to the progress of construction, that's very helpful. Next, Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. The DCS is found around the world, especially where there are water resources nearby, such as Kai-Tak. It's near the sea, so we make use of the sea water for for cooling, for discharge of the heated water into the sea. So if you're not near water resources, you use a cooling tower for DCS. Now, this is found. These are found in various parts of the world. Recently, I went with Trade Development Council to Bangkok, Thailand, to study the infrastructure development. And in the center of Bangkok, there's a new development area, over 16 hectares, private development, 5 blocks of grade 8 office towers, and then hotels and shopping malls. And on the air conditioning, our hosts tell us that particular area, within that particular area, for all the facilities, they show us there's the cooling tower. There's our district cooling system. So that's an option taken in other parts of the world. So even in other parts of the world, there are instances, many instances of private sector initiative. So I support the government approach, especially in new development areas. District cooling is a very important green infrastructure. Now, the mode can be different from that of Kai-Tak because Kai-Tak was the first one. Now, unless the government took the initiative and makes the investment, it's difficult to take DCS forward. So that was the correct approach at that time, because at that time I was the chairman of the Bills Committee, and if you have to stipulate the various facilities within the development area, you need legislation to specify or stipulate, and you need to stipulate the charges. So LegCo was actively participating in the discussion in making the law, and so we are now seeing the implementation. And the Secretary is right in the approach being proposed. Now, say for a particular area, now if unless the relevant provisions thereon are very detailed, private sector participation may not happen as the government plans. So because private sector may have its own calculations. So I'd like to ask what would be the future approach? The Secretary, briefly, please. Now, we discussed that and we dropped the plan. We also are thinking about incentives. There may be tax incentives. There may be floor area exemptions, and so on. And we try to attract more private sector participants. Now, I hope that every new development area will have its own particular arrangements that can be taken to LegCo. Well, I hope that there would be very effective and forceful implementation. Next, Mr. Chang Ken. I cannot deny that DCS has effects of saving power and reducing carbon. And other economies have many instances. But DCS have several problems. Firstly, the construction cost is expensive. For Kai-Tak, it's 4.9 billion. It's very expensive. And also, construction time is very long. Now, it was for the commercial buildings, but their buildings were completed before our system was completed. And your annual operating costs, we haven't been told. It's very high. Now, so the government builds it and maintains it, operates it, and has a very major effect on government finances. Now, on many occasions, I had my reservations, and now you hear other members, and I think it's good you have listened to us, and you encourage private sector participation in new development areas. Now, the Secretary is saying that environment is also an economic initiative. So you should be more open in your vision. Now there may be new methods of carbon reduction and energy savings. Now, and if you can introduce private sector participation with new technologies, this can provide momentum for that particular area and create wealth for the economy. So these DCS systems and energy saving systems should not be restricted in their nature. So people should be allowed and encouraged to develop new ideas. So I think you can find that way a cheaper and more effective way than DCS.
Secretary, please. Thank you. I'd like to thank Mr. Chen for his suggestion. Indeed, what is in my mind is that the beauty of a centralized DCS is that there is economy of scale and it will be cost effective. I think we can comment on the technology. Sometimes we may be including areas that would only be up for development in 10, 20 years down the road. So maybe we don't have to rely on the cooling towers or the air-cooled systems for such remote systems. But I'm sure the DCS will still be the mainstream. That is, water cooling systems will still be the mainstream. Mr. Dominic Lee. Well, for the DCS, it can enhance the efficiency, and buildings can have greater design flexibility. In the long term, you'll have popular support. We are concerned about the cost effectiveness. In the case of Kai-Tak, only 60% of the capacity is being utilized. So does it mean that there was overestimation in the past? Is it because of that, in the case of Hong Shui Kiu Ha Chun, you would like to scale down instead of 2 central cooling plants, you will have 1 only? And why is it that the market isn't that keen in taking up DCS? Now you're saying that in the future, non-government organizations or private developers will be taking the lead. In the case of the overseas experience, there is room for monopoly. Say, for example, there may be different developers interested in a particular area. What will happen should there be monopoly? And how does it compare? I want to know about the comparison between the government taking the lead in everything, and then we responsible for the infrastructure, and then we'll be bearing the larger chunk of the cost. Secretary, the director will talk more about the overseas experience. Now, if we allow the market to take the lead, in other words, there will no longer be direct government subsidies. As I have said, the scale as well as the energy efficiency means that there will certainly be cost effectiveness. But then you were right to say that perhaps the government should make use of amending the land lease or introducing other conditions so that there won't be any monopoly or failure to complete the project. And probably we need to think about the final details. As Dr. Low has said, if we are to implement the changes, we'll come back to you and then we'll consult your views on the final details. The director can talk about the case of Kai-Tak. Director, thank you, Chair. I understand members are concerned about the experience of Kai-Tak. The system has been in place for quite a period of time. We'd like to know about the costs as well as the effectiveness. As said in our opening remarks, well, in fact, in relation to the fees imposed on the clients, we are looking at a life cycle of 30 years. When compared with the systems to be developed by the users themselves, it will be comparable. It will be they only need to pay less. There are also other side effects. They can free up the rooftop, and they don't need to construct the cooling towers on the rooftop, and they can also stay away from the heat island effects. Well, 60% of the cooling capacity has been taken up. And then for the past year, for all the 4 seasons to be covered, when compared with other standalone cooling systems elsewhere, well, we said that we would be 35% better than the traditional systems. In fact, we were able to achieve that. In a better case, we were more than 35% better. In other cases, close to 35%. For Kai-Tak development, well, the pace has been slower than originally forecast, and then there have been some changes. Now, should there be huge government investment in an area, then of course the cooling capacity may come in late or early. Therefore, for other new development areas, we'll try to look at other modes. That is, we'll be examining the pace of the development before we decide on the actual timetable. Next, Mr. Stephen Ho. I would like to thank the government for making the adjustments. As everybody has said, we want to protect our environment, and we have to invest for our future. We need to contribute towards environmental protection. But of course, we know that we don't have adequate money, so we would like to make changes the central DCS can be left to the private sector. I don't think it is a bad thing. We can rely on the market forces. However, Chairman, in relation to amendments to the current ordinance, now if you ask the market to take up the construction task, what about the rates of the charges if they are different? As we know that the payback period would be 20-30 years, and enterprise must make money. Now, for you to get interest in the bidding process, the rates may have to go up. But then in this way, there will be different rates within the same area. But of course, we know that if we don't proceed with this, then there will be difficulties in achieving reduction in carbon emission. But when we are short of money, we need to be flexible. As members have mentioned, we have to consider why the utilization rate is 60% only. In the case of a shopping mall, it's easier to use a centralized DCS. But then in the case of a number of residential blocks, then it may not be that feasible. So please sort of comment on my views. Secretary. Well, in the case of Kai-Tak development, only 60% of the installed cooling capacity is being taken up. I think this is partly because of the changes in the land use, and then the timetable is now different from what we had in mind when we first developed the Kai-Tak development DCS, and so it seems that we are slower than before. Well, in future, we'll look at the pace of the development of the area, and that will be aligned with the development of our DCS. And therefore, in the case of Hung Shui Kiu, instead of taking the entire project as a single project, we'll be breaking up into two parts so that we won't be late for the developments. And also, in stage 2 or phase 2, we can have room for further expansion, so there will be flexibility. You were interested in the dollar sign. Now the government has in mind a 30-year payback period. That is because the government isn't going to make money out of it. Now, for business that has a payback period of 30 years, the market won't have any interest, and the government is taking that up. So probably for the market to do it, probably they won't have a 30-year payback period. But then there will be competition in the market. As a result of competition, we believe that the rates of the charges can come down. When the government is taking the lead, I think you know that in terms of planning, etc., we have a lot of constraints. Our cost, our investment would not be as favorable as the market forces. Well, you will rely on competition to lower the rates of the fees. But then I want to know whether a private developer's rates would be hugely different from those of the government. Today, the air conditioning charges are on the high side. I want to know whether you're going to impose any legal requirements. Well, are you going to regulate the fees? Well, when we have a tender exercise, we have to look at the outcome of the bidding process, and then we can say what will be done. Well, the government has done part of the job. In future, there will be some comparison. I hope that the fees won't be too different from those of the government. Otherwise, it will be conflicting. Next, Mr. Robert Lee. Thank you, Chair. For the DCS, I understand that for us to do this in Hong Kong, it saves money. It is green, and in Kai Tak, it has been successful. It will be good for long-term development and the long-term achievement of the goal of carbon neutrality when we have it in other new development areas. Well, it is said that we can make good use of the market forces and we can consider other modes of financing like having green bonds, or we can set up REITs, etc. I want to know more about that. What is the initial idea of the government? You say that we should make greater use of the market forces. What is the initial response of the market? It is said that if it involves a long-term exercise, a long repayment period, of course no one would be interested in a loss-making business in the long run. Well, the financial sector, the property sector would consider the risk. They would like to consider the prospect. So do you have any positive benefits that you can share with us so that you can encourage more organizations to take part? You talked about issuing bonds, etc. Does it mean that you have a regular source of income and therefore it will be attractive to the investors? So can you not tell us how attractive it will be to the investors? And finally, be it the industrial sector or the financial services sector, I want to know whether you have done anything to approach the organizations in those sectors, hoping that such sectors can tie in with your exercise. But of course, first of all, you have to make sure that the projects are attractive. In this way, you can really rely on the market forces. Thank you. Secretary, as to the market response as well as the possible modes or approaches, I would like to defer to my colleague. Thank you, Chair. Well, both the FS as well as the Secretary for the Environment and Energy have already said that we'll be having greater flexibility with private participation. Then the picture will change. A number of organizations have told us that they're interested. They told us about their concerns. In fact, we have had a few meetings with such interested groups, and the market response is good. And in fact, they have told us about their own experience elsewhere in the world, so that we can have some reference. As early as last year, we engaged consultants to tell us about alternative models other than the government taking the lead, like private participation or the government granting a franchise, or whether there would be public-private partnership, etc. The consultants' report has been completed. It's a initial report, and we are studying it. We'll try to see what approaches are possible in relation to private participation. Once we are ready with the final result, we will share it with you. Next, Mr. Chi Kwok Kang. Well, for the Kai Tak DCS, it's been in operation for a few years. Energy-wise, it is efficient, but then it entailed a very heavy initial investment. If we have PPP or private sector participation only, I'm sure it will be more efficient. Now, for the government to continue with Kutong North as well as the Tung Chung East DCS, I want to know whether you have considered introducing private participation so as to reduce the burden on our public coffers. And then it is said that smaller scale DCS and centralized multi-building cooling systems can be considered. I want to know more about such an idea. I want to know whether such can apply to government buildings in NDAs. There is a few government buildings in the NDA sharing one centralized multi-building cooling system.
The Secretary. Now, Kutong North and Tung Chung extension. Now, as we mentioned, these are ongoing, and the Kutong North It will be completed in 2026, and Tongchung extension will be 2027. So the works are underway. So we don't plan to change the mode. We will complete these two items ourselves. Now, the question is, for new development areas, if there are several government buildings adjacent to each other, can they share the same DCS? Of course, yes. We hope that the DCS will also serve the other buildings nearby, and that will increase the cost effectiveness. For Hong Shui Kiu and the Sentin Technopole, we are looking at the design for the future mode of operation so as to achieve more cost effectiveness. Next, Mr. Chen Su-hong. Thank you, Chairman. Now, I would declare interest. I am Senior Advisor to China Light and Power. Now, DCS or central air conditioning, these are very mature developments. There's public sector, private sector, private sector, public sector with private participation around the world. And the government has conducted a review, and it has reported to the panel. I think the direction is correct. I am very supportive. Now, the DCS, whether it's successful, it depends on economy of scale, energy efficacy, and for the 30-year operation, now you really have to calculate the sums. These are large capital-intensive investments, and you have to take into account the operating costs too. For every user in the area, now, they save space, they save costs, they save maintenance costs, they merely turn on the tap. Now, in the end, they have to pay the charges. So the operation mode now that depends on various factors. You allocate land for the operation of these private sector projects. So how much, now what is government involvement? Now the incentives, as the Secretary said, you will consider offering incentives including tax incentives. But when the private investor goes in, it depends on the progress of private participants moving in. Now, if the rate is low, then over the first 10 years, you lose a lot of money. There will be a large deficit, and the project may end in failure. So, for now, do you have a model after discussing with your consultants on the mode of private participation? Now, you're holding back on the DCS projects not yet completed. Now, if you have a small area, then when you try to lay the power supply, the ducts and so on, you need to do the planning. Otherwise, there will be no space. As Mr. Chen said, there are different modes. It's not one mode fits all. Now, in the future, if I develop a particular area, perhaps the private developer takes over for the whole area, and there may be some kind of franchise, or there can be public-private sector collaboration. The private participant may provide all the funding, and the government will control the price and so on. Now, we need to look at the timetable, the size of the project, and only then can we see which mode is the best. So it depends on the circumstances. I agree that we cannot have one size fits all. Now, so different areas, depending on the nature of the users, I think that's a good approach. Ms. Chen Yitming. Now, I think this reduces the cost based on experiences around the world, so I support that. Now, on NDAs, I have two questions. Now, in the past, government took the initiative on the DCS large-scale Kai-Tak 3 plants supports over 10 buildings. Now, in the future, there will be a adjustment to the scale. So, what's the definition of DCS? Will you amend that? And in the areas that we're looking at, over 10 hectares. Now, if there are only a few buildings, does that fit the definition? Now, how do you define the size and regulation? Now, the DCS is subject to legislation. For instance, covers the scope of the Kai-Tak development. Now, the commercial users within Kai-Tak are forced by law to connect to the DCS. Now, will you enforce that in the NTAs? Do you enforce the users to connect to DCS? Now, will you discuss with the relevant bureaus to provide policy incentives so that Sentin and Kai-Tak North, Kutong North continue to use the DCS? Now, for the definition of the DCS, it means a central cooling system within a district. It can be large or small. Looking at different places, some may be a few buildings. Now, there's economy of scale, which would be more substantial if the area is large. When it's a certain size, when up to when it's very large, the transmission lines, ducts may be subject to more wear and tear, so that may not be cost effective. So it depends case by case. Now, in the new development areas that we are now looking at, we take into account the development timetable, the mode of development. So we let them take the lead, and we will collaborate with the other bureaus, and there may be different phases of development, and then we try to cooperate and tailor-make the mode. There can be different modes developed depending on the development of the enterprises. There can be public and private sector collaboration. It depends on the size, the timetable, and the type. Thank you. Next, Ms. Carmen Khan. Thank you, Chairman. First, now I was in project financing for the large buildings, etc. I can appreciate the difficulty of making projections. Now, based on the Caltech experience, we do see some underutilization compared to the original design. It's now 60% or so. It's now 75 hectares, but non-domestic areas it's 173. So you do not use your entire capacity. There are different factors. Now, still, there must be an overall consideration. Now, you are going to amend the legislation, you add Kutong North and Tongchong East, so you know these two areas will continue to use TCS, whereas for Hong Shui Kiu, Hachun, you reduce the number of plants from 2 to 1. So you are making changes as you go along. So given the period, the length of the legislative year, we cannot discuss in many more sessions. So we're not worried about the technology. We are concerned whether the developers have the will or wish to participate. Now, for the private sector to take the lead, as the document mentioned, we have examples in the science park. So how do you ensure that developers will be interested in the future? So here, I think you need to ascertain further the feasibility. You shouldn't just conclude that the government will let the private sector take over or engage in public-private collaboration. Now, you can have different modes. You can have private sector financing, for instance. Now, also, given the Caltech experience, now I look back at the document. There was an audit report, the audit committee, and have you looked at the suggestions? There were items to be followed up by Environment Department and the EMSD. So the Caltech experience can be extended to other projects.
For the case of Caltech, I would defer to the director. As I have mentioned in my earlier replies, for our future mode, we are open-minded. A few models have been suggested, like private-public partnership. So it doesn't mean that it will always be funded by the government and operated by the government. It could very well be funded and operated by the private sector. It all depends on the timetable and scale of the development as well as the nature of the development. As I have said, when we have more concrete details, we'll come back to you before we make a final decision to launch it. So in future, you have the chance to have a dialogue with us and to give us suggestions. Director. Yes, I'll be brief in my explanation. So there are 3 plants in Kai Tak. We have gathered the experience in terms of construction and operation. And in fact, we have interdepartmental cooperation. And we have fine-tuned that. We've also fine-tuned the procedures. And such will be applied to other NDAs as well. Next, Mr. Kenneth Lau. I have to declare that myself and my fellow members own land in Hachun for adjustments to the Hong Shui Kiu Hachun Stage 1, as well as the change of the mode in relation to Sentin Technopole. It will no longer be government-led, it will be left to the private sector. $40 billion will be saved. I believe that it is right for the government to do this because we are under financial pressure. This is commendable. In future, the private sector will take the lead. I think it is flexible and we can use the innovative technologies. We can meet the requirements of users. It can also cut the risk to be borne by the government. I think such a model can be adopted in other projects as well. I have some questions for Hong Shui Kiu Hachun Stage 1. The central chilling plants will be cut from 2 to 1. And then for the total air-conditioned or air-cooled floor area, it will be reduced from 27 million meters square to 700,000 meters square. Money has been set aside for underlying pipe work. There has been criticism that it is too expensive. For the Kai Tak, the price tag was $4.9 billion. Now, for Hong Shui Kiu Hachun New Development Area Phase 1, I want to know exactly how much money will be needed and how can you tell whether it is cost-effective? Secretary, I'd like to defer to the Secretary. The Director. Director, please. For Hong Shui Kiu Hachun, we examined the case. We believe that it is better for us to focus on the first central cooling plant. We have a railway project there, and we are focusing on Hong Shui Kiu Station. We have got higher education institution, and we have also got a clearer future about the land uses related to youth development. So there's greater certainty in relation to Phase 1, so the government will still be responsible for the Phase 1 DCS. Now, for the scale of the cooling plants, instead of 2, I think we'll have 1 only, and then the money needed as well as the size of the piping network will be quite different. As to the development around the plant, we are having a look of that. Once we have finalized the cooling plant, then we'll have a firmer idea about the price tag, and we'll come back to here to apply for funding approval. For the time being, we don't actually have a figure about the cost for Hong Shui Kiu Hachun, but it will certainly be much lower than the previous figure. If there aren't other questions, then Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Chair. For the DCS paper, the government is changing its strategy. First of all, I have to say that you have my support. Well, prior to the budget delivery, I already said that in the light of the huge financial burden, the best solution is to hold the large-scale government projects that aren't that urgent, and then it will be a much better approach than getting extra savings or extra funding from the ordinary citizens. It is said that at least $40 billion can be saved in relation to the works expenditure. So you have my support. It is the right direction. Now I have two questions. In the paper, it is said that for the new directions of DCS, there will be private sector participation and it can cut down on the government funds needed. You have my support. A number of models have been suggested in the paper. I want to know whether this will happen. That is, when you talk to the private sector, I'm not sure as to the extent of the interest of the private sector. If at the end of the day, there isn't any keen interest from the private sector, I want to know whether the government will have no choice but to take it up. Of course, we don't want to see this happen, and at least on my part, I hope that someone from the private sector will be incentivized to bear the cost. It is much better for us to spend so much public money on the DCS. And then for Kutong North and Tung Chung East, you have given us an explanation. Most of the works have been started, but I wondered if you can provide more information. For the approved expenditure, to what extent has it been used? And please also tell us the extent of the completion of the works. I can understand the Secretary's explanation. If a large part of the project has been completed, it's better not to abort it. It will only entail more expenditure. But then it will be a good idea if you can give us a better picture of how much has been completed. Thank you. Secretary, for the two projects, as well as the progress, etc., I would defer to the director. Now, in Hong Kong, in the past, it was mainly a government-led project. There aren't too many non-government-led projects, but in fact, we have seen such in the private sector. And in fact, in recent years, we have seen non-government led projects. This is because of the economic benefits as well as the cost effectiveness. In fact, it has become a business all around the world. Once we have floated the idea, there has been some interest from the private sector. So I'm not worried about lack of interest in the private market. It is a matter of matching the timetables. And in future, we'll come back here to give you more details. Director, for the Kutong North DCS, in the year 2022, work started. We are 30% complete. In 2026, we can complete the task. End of 2026, we will be able to supply the cooling water to the clients. For Tung Chung East, in year 2021, work started. About half of the project has been completed. We need to beat the deadline of 2027 when we will be providing or supplying the cooling water to the users. And in light of such progress, we'll continue with the two projects. Thank you. Next, Mr. Hui Simon Lee. Thank you, Chair. First of all, in relation to the amended direction, of course, I know that the government is scaling it down. If the scale is too small, then I just wonder whether it will defeat the purpose of the DCS and whether it will be less cost-effective. That's my main concern. I've also got two questions. First of all, earlier on in the policy address as well as the budget, it is said that the Northern Metropolis will be developed as a single area. And it has been said that there will be facilitating measures for the private developers. Now, in the light of these two characteristics, I think maybe we can achieve greater synergy. The second question is that in relation to the rates of fees, it is said that they are competitive when compared with the carbon emission reduction, etc. do you have figures as well? And then for the same area, how different would it be? So please tell us about the benefits to be gained. Secretary, for the figures, in a moment I'll ask the director to answer those questions. And then you talked about the scale as well as the model and their relationship. For Hong Shui Kiu Hachun, yes, we're scaling it down, but still we are talking about 700,000 meters square of air-conditioned floor area. In other words, 70 hectares of land. Just now, a member said that for a site overseas with an area of 10 plus hectares, they still have a DCS, and it was found to be cost-effective, and it was run by the private sector. So I believe that even after the revision, the area won't be too small to make it cost-effective. But of course, we have to check the final land uses. That is, the nature of the building is to be developed there. Private partnership will of course be considered by us. We do have such an experience for BOT, etc. It means that the government doesn't have to be responsible for the works as well as the operation, but then the government does have a role to play. So depending on the land uses, we'll pick the best model. For the comparative figures, I would like to defer to the director. Just now, the member said that he was concerned about the competitiveness of the rates of the fees. For Tung Chung North, for Kutong North and Tung Chung East, we have a 30-year life cycle in mind. We say that it's competitive. It means that for the developer of a private building to do the calculations, bearing in mind a 30-year horizon, it will be a few percentage points cheaper. Other than the financial advantage, if they don't need to build their air conditioning facilities, there will be a reduction in the initial investment, and then the rooftop area will be freed up, and then operational and maintenance duties will be gone. So there will be a number of advantages that make the idea attractive to the private developers or the private sector. In fact, we have received interest in this idea. Next, Dr. Elizabeth Quat. Of course, Chair, it is a green option if we have DCS. That's why you always have my support. However, we have budget deficit. It will be very expensive if the government is continue to take the lead. Now, there are proposals to change the policy, and I think it's worth a while to further explore the idea. But then I have to say that I have some worries. After all, we are talking about infrastructural projects, and the payback period is long. And to the investors, the size of the investment is huge, and they have to be guaranteed, or they have to be sure of the viability before they would be interested. I just want to know whether it will be the case that the Sentin Technopole will be late in commissioning as a result of lack of interest in the DCS. For Sentin, we don't know about the scale, we don't know about the timetable, we don't know when a particular site will be used by a particular enterprise for a specific purpose. So at this stage, if you ask the private sector to bid for the project, it will be quite impossible. For Sentin Technopole, how are you going to attract the private sector to bid for the DCS there? And then another question is in relation to the service providers of DCS in the market. Do you know whether they are interested and what sort of concerns they have in mind? I know that in other places the government may come up with tax concessions among other incentives. In Hong Kong, for us to attract investors to invest in such infrastructural projects, I want to know whether there will be concessions for them. On the other hand, I'm worried now if you have a particular provider in a particular area, then there won't be any competition. In other words, in future, will the user be held ransom by the single operator or single provider? Are you going to regulate the fees under the ordinance so as to protect the interests of the users?
Secretary? Concerning the market reaction, I will defer to the director. As I said, the charges in the future, we are of course concerned about possible monopoly. So we will put forward regulation regimes, and we will have different modes. When we have more specifics, we will report to the panel. So we will take on board your views. On market reaction, I defer to the director. Thank you, Chairman. When we take forward the DCS, there will be private participation. Several companies have approached us. In the meetings carried out, they are concerned in relation to high-tech development. The projects or the type of business are key considerations. For Sentin, there may be government users, and then there may be data centers, and so on. So they are rather different from the commercial malls that in the way that they require power. So we will discuss with them and formulate our schemes. And now it's my turn. Now, I agree that the DCS is very preferable. At the same time, there's a cost recovery period that is long when the government operates it. Given the government's current financial situation, there may be more urgent priorities. So items of longer cost recovery is quite reasonably being left to the private sector. Now, the larger the scale, the more economy of scale. Now looking at your plans, the areas are not small. How will you allocate different areas to different developers? Now, if you leave it to the private sector, they may encounter difficulties. You have to discuss with them through many departments. There may be underground facilities that have to be well planned ahead. So the earlier it's undertaken, the better. So the government can do the planning and the private sector can participate. The government does the construction, the government does the overall coordination. That would be more effective. And also on the regulation of charges, that has to be considered when an area is served by DCS and there are development projects, if I know that there is DCS, then when I build my project, I need not provide air conditioning in my buildings, or my facilities can be simple. But if I leave out such facilities and then the government and the DCS is very expensive, then it may be very expensive to make adaptations to modify my air conditioning facilities. Now, on the first question, is the economy of scale the sole determinant of cost effectiveness? No. As I said, when the ski area is large, there may be more wear and tear, as I said, for instance. Now, so we are not concerned. We are not talking about a very small number of buildings. Now, as for overall coordination and planning by the government, of course that would be better. We have to look at the timetable and the mode of development by the private developer. The government certainly plays a role. It doesn't mean that the government leaves everything to the private sector. And on the monopoly of charges, as I said, we will have our eye on the matter, and there will be provisions on the pricing, so they cannot raise the charges at their will. Now, I think this is a good step forward, and then you can have the market provide more letters of intent, and then you get more views from the market, so you get more ideas on the scale of the project and so on, so that the government can set parameters on charges and so on, taking into account the market's views. Now this is a legislative proposal, so we've concluded the item. Now, within 2025, about July, they will submit the order to LegCo so that it be implemented within 2025. Any question on the timetable? If not, we come to the next item, item number 4, review of the 9th technical memorandum for the allocation of emission allowances for power plants. We invite the companies to come in. We have the Undersecretary for the Environment and Ecology and her team with the senior engineers and the chief engineer, electrical. Now, today we solicit members' views on the 10th Technical Memorandum. Now, the government has taken major effort to reduce emission compared to 2024. In 24, the sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides and RSP Now, in comparison, the major research 98%, 76%, and 88%, even though the power usage has increased by 18% over the period. Now, the government has issued technical memorandums in accordance with the Air Pollution Control Ordinance. According to Section 26G, the technical memorandum sets the stipulated pollutants, have set specified technical allowances, and we take into account the best practical measures so that we can comply with the air quality indicators, and so that not to damage health. According to the latest technical memorandum, it was passed in 2021. It says that by 2026, the power plants have to abide by certain emission allowances, and we undertake that they will be reviewed every 2 years. The first review was completed in 2023. No change is required. And then we completed the second review in early 2025. So we are therefore issuing the new or the 10th technical memorandum to further reduce the technical allowances to be complied with by 2030. Compared to the 9th technical memorandum, the 10th medical memorandum sets allowances for SO2, NOx, and RSP by 90%, 20%, and 14% respectively. The detailed proposals are in the document. If members give us their support in the second quarter of this year, we will submit to the 10th memorandum, and it would be passed by negative vetting. We expect that the new technical memorandum can be effective by the end of this year, so that the allowances, reduced allowances, can be implemented by 2030. And now the acting PAS of Environment of the Bureau to brief us, Mr. Leung. Thank you. I supply some background information. The air quality has improved. The pollutants have reduced. Now at the lowest since reunification. In 2004 to 2024, the SO2, NOx, and RSP have reduced by 45% to 88%, and visibility has improved by 80%. Now, the main reason is that the emission by power plants have reduced. Now, the SO2, NOx, and RSP emissions have been reduced by 98%, 6%, and so on. And the power usage has increased by 18% during the meantime. Now, what has the government done to control these emissions? Now, starting in 2008, the government has, in accordance with APCO, issued technical memorandums to set the allowances for these pollutants and progressively reduce the emissions. The latest 9th one was passed in Electrical in 2021. It sets the emissions allowances from 2026, and compared to the first technical memorandum, the 9th technical memorandum concerning SO2, NOx, and RSP, the allowances have reduced by 80%, 34% and 70% respectively. In issuing the 9th memorandum, we undertook to review every 2 years. Last review was in 2023, and the indication was that no change is needed. And in early this year, we concluded the second review, and we will further reduce the allowances in 2030. So we issued a 10th technical memorandum. Now, according to the legal requirement, the new allowances have to be issued 4 years ahead. So the new allowances will be effective 1st of January 2030. Now, we consider several factors, including the power usage by 2030-31, and the progress of new power plant construction, the amount of renewable energy available, and low emission coal being acquired, and expected nuclear power intake. Now, the government has asked the two power companies to adopt the best practicable measures, and we propose to reduce the allowances for the two power companies by 3 to 34%. Overall, the SO2 emission will reduce by about 90%, NOx by 20%, and RSP by about 14%. Now, concerning the reduced allowances, we have consulted the two power companies. They agreed to progressively reduce the emissions, and they accept the new allowances. Now, here we see the progress from the first to the ninth technical memorandum, the allowances and the actual emissions. The yellow line shows that from the time of the first technical memorandum, the power usage has increased by 20%. At the same time, the SO2, NOx, and emissions have reduced by over 80%. Now, on the timetable, as we mentioned, after this meeting in May, on the new allowances, we will consult ACE, and then second quarter we will submit the new memorandum to LegCo, and then by 2030, 1st of January, the new allowances will become effective. Thank you. And now, members, please ask questions.
It involves a legislative proposal. The following members will speak: Chen Sil-hung, Chi Kwok-keun, Chen Yut-ming, and Frankie Yik. 4 minutes each for both your questions and answers. Mr. Chen, I have to declare interest. I'm a senior advisor for the CLP. In recent years, in the energy sector, including the two power companies as well as the EEB, as a result of using more clean energy, the air quality in Hong Kong has been improving continuously. I want to say that for us, a sustainable power supply, it depends on the reliability of electricity supply, the environmental performance, as well as the tariffs. The three of them are equally indispensable. We can't just blindly go after environmental objectives. It will be impracticable. Now, there are proposals to amend the emission allowances. I think it is based on the best practical means. You have my support. Now, for the 9th TM, it is said that after 2030, we need to come up with new proposals. In 2021, we had the Hong Kong Climate Action Plan 2050 that was already a few years back. I did advise the CE that we should enhance regional cooperation among the GBA cities, in particular, introduction of cleaner energies like nuclear energy, zero-emission energy, and new energy. And we have to explore more opportunities to develop renewable energy in Hong Kong, like offshore wind farms at sea, as well as the solar panels in restaurants, so that in relation to the emission of pollutants, we can further lower them so that before 2050 we can achieve zero emission generation of electricity. Now, we have had the 2050 Climate Action Plan. A few years have already passed. I would like to get some advice from the Undersecretary for the horizon after 2030. What about regional cooperation? How can that be counted upon to help us to achieve the Climate Action Plan 2050 targets? And I want to know whether the government is about to evaluate the Climate Action Plan and whether you will look at longer-term energy cooperation, including energy cooperation in the GBA. Undersecretary, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member, for your questions and your support. Well, for our Climate Action Plan, we have already mentioned that power generation has always been a main source of carbon emission, accounting for about 61%. And on the 17th of April, we released the latest carbon emission figures. We have also updated you with the latest figures. As the member suggested, we have been asking for the use of the BPM, the best practical methods. We have also looked at the Climate Action Plan in relation to the fuel mix. We also look at the committed development projects. Just now, the member mentioned regional cooperation. Indeed, it is an important component. In fact, in the year 2026, when the clean energy transmission system has been enhanced, then zero carbon energy, like clean energy and nuclear energy, will account for 35% of the fuel mix. In the year 2035, when the Area 132 project is completed, then the zero carbon fuel will account for 60 to 70% of the entire fuel mix. The member asked us whether we would be reviewing the Climate Action Plan. Indeed, we have such a plan. We are now making ourselves ready for the review. In due course, we will make announcements. We'll also give you the details. Chair, if I may add a word here. When it comes to regional cooperation, in particular energy infrastructure, it takes a long period of time, as many as 10 years or more, for both parties to come to a conclusion. But then we are having a countdown. If we want to have 2050 carbon neutrality, there isn't much time left. And so when it comes to regional cooperation, we need to expedite our efforts. We need to talk to our partners, including the Guangdong municipal government, so that we can have a cooperation plan that benefits mutually. So I hope the government will work harder. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member. In fact, we have been talking to the provincial government as well as the energy ministry. We know that such tasks are long-term in nature, so we have been following this up very closely. Next, Mr. Chi Kwok Keung. First of all, I have to commend the Bureau for working so hard in improving our air quality. We are having cleaner and cleaner air. I support the tightening of the allocation of EAs for the 2 power plants. Now, for the Castle Peak Station A, it will be closed. And then for the HEC, after the new gas-fired units have been commissioned, they will still be having coal-fired units generating 23% of the energy. I want to know whether in the long term you have the target of abolishing the use of coal to generate electricity. And what about the renewable energy? I want to know more about your plans about the 2033 deadline concerning the tariffs. I'm afraid RE will be less popular. Now, will that have a bearing on your future TMs? First of all, in relation to the ratios, as the Climate Action Plan has said, it is hoped that in the year 2035, we can stop using coal to generate electricity, but then it will still be relied upon as a backup source. In the year 2050, we would like to achieve carbon neutrality. We have to make sure that with zero emission generation, be it coal or clean energy, etc., will be able to achieve that. Now for RE, when it comes to power generation, of course currently it accounts for about 2%. And then as to the tariffs in relation to the RE plan, RE technologies are sort of improving, and in fact we have been looking at the overseas experience. In fact, subsidies are being removed and reduced all over the world in relation to RE. In the year 2033 and thereafter, I don't think it is likely for us to continue with the subsidies. We will be watching it very closely. For us to develop RE, there are also other incentives, and we will be promoting the use of RE all the time. Thank you. Next, Ms. Chen Yutming. Well, it is said that we have seen a drastic reduction in relation to pollution caused by power generation for the past 20 years. Municipal solid waste has also seen a reduction. It is good for us to see that we have a cleaner environment. It is all because of the hard work of the Environment and Energy Bureau. Well, I'm not too familiar with power generation, but I know that we have waste into energy project in Shekujiao. Of course, the current paper is about the emission allowances, but what about incinerators? Are incinerators regarded as power generation units, and then will they be emitting pollutants? I'm particularly interested in the Shekujiao facility. Will it be under the regulatory framework of the government? Well, power plants are power plants. Just now we have been talking about the TMs, and the TMs will be applicable to power companies. Just now the member talked about something else, and that's about waste into energy. At the planning stage, we have already carried out a study, and we know that they need to comply with the requirements under the EIAO. Well, we'll be monitoring the emission standards. So we do have a number of measures to have an oversight over the waste into energy, even though they don't have something similar to the power plants like the TMs, etc. Would it be regarded as a generating facilities? No.
Mr. Frankie Yip. Thank you, Chairman. The Undersecretary mentioned that the government has clear targets for 2030 and 2050. Now, it's a time process, and the power companies have to cooperate. Now, is there a clear roadmap with the government and the power companies to achieve the targets set by the government? Has there been such discussion? Now, there are several levels with the power companies. We have schemes of control. The business makeup is one item. Some development schemes have to be agreed by the government. The gas-fired plants and so on. And they are subject to licenses that are renewed every 2 years, and we will apply some provisions at the time of renewal. Now, for the technical memorandum, 4 years ago, for instance, ahead of 2030, we will reduce the allowances. Then we do discuss with them 4 years ahead. For the 10th technical memorandum, as previously, we discussed with the two power companies, and they accepted the allowances as being achievable. Now, of course, it depends on how much resources they devote to achieve these targets. Now, this is the 10th technical memorandum. I know that the two companies said they have no problem. They need no special investment. They will not increase the charges to the consumers. Now, in theory, the government has to communicate with the companies on the power, on the type of plants to be adopted and so on. Now, I know that electricity tariffs are subject to many factors. Now, what will happen to future electricity tariffs for the consumers? Now, if you have to achieve certain targets, will the tariffs rise or fall, so that you can inform the public, and then they can make adjustments to the way they consume power. They can take certain actions to reduce the electricity consumption, for instance. Thank you. We thank the member for his views. Every year we inform the panel on our reviews. It's right that we encourage the public to save energy and reduce emission. If we so I think it's very helpful to inform the public. This next, Ms. Carmen Khan. Now, according to review mechanism for the technical memorandum to become effective, a new version has to be disclosed or concluded 4 years ahead. So we know that there is scope to further reduce the allowances. So I believe the various factors have been consulted. The development of the power plant makeup, for instance. Now, you had a review in 2023. Now, if you need to make changes, then the changes will become effective in 2028. So, when you had the review in 2023, you felt that there is no need to amend the allowances, but now you feel there is the need. So, what's the difference? And looking at the previous technical memoranda, it's not every 2 years necessarily. Now, in certain years, in around 2019, there was one technical memorandum every year. So how do you determine the intervals? Does that depend on the plants then in operation? When you have the scheme of control, when they have the 5-year development plan, are those in step with each other or are they unrelated? We thank the member for her questions. Now, firstly, we have review every 2 years. We're talking about the 9th Technical Memorandum. In 2021, it was passed in Legislative. It was a review every 2 years at the time. So the 2023 review will determine the allowances in 2028. Now, the 10th Technical Memorandum resulted in reductions in allowances, but not from the 2023 review. For instance, the Hong Kong Electric, by 2029, they will have a newer power plant coming into operation in 2029. So we feel that there is scope for reduction in allowances. Now, the member is right. Sometimes there was an annual review. Now, if there is scope for reduction, we will not hesitate to communicate with the power companies. So if in a certain year there was some important development, for instance, some gas-fired plant was commissioned or they have new supplies, then we will follow up with them in a timely manner. So the member was right. Sometimes we discuss with them every year. That has to do with the development plans. When we discuss the technical memorandum, the government may have already agreed with the power companies on certain development items. For instance, the Hong Kong Electric 2029 gas-fired plant, that was agreed earlier. So this will be reflected in the technical memorandum concerned. So let me make some final remarks. I welcome the initiative. This is an step to update in accordance with our climate blueprint. The public is concerned foremost with the steadiness of power supply, and then there is the price consideration. Now, there is a cost to reduction of emissions. These have to be calculated ahead. For instance, a new technology may reduce the emissions from coal. So this depends on developments in the market. And in case the steadiness, the stability of power supply is affected, if the power plant emits more than planned, then it can make adjustment after making application in accordance with Section 26G. So did that happen in the past? Yes, there's such a provision in Section 26K. If there are special incidents out of the control of the power companies so that the pollutant has increased and the power company has done its best to prevent such occurrence, then under that provision, after the incident takes place, then it can inform the authority as soon as possible to reduce the emission, and we will we will consider the application. But actually, that hasn't happened in the past. Now, for instance, renewable energy is sometimes not available. The availability is less than planned, so there are mechanisms to deal with that. So there should be flexibility for caution's sake. So that concludes my questions. So in 2025, second quarter, the 10th technical memorandum will be submitted to LegCo, and on 1st of January 2030, it will be in effect. The AOB, no AOB. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.